Hello, and today we'll be tackling the Retime node. So the Retime node allows you to retime your data inside Houdini. You can retime whatever type of data you can think of, such as points, particles, even volumetric data. So here I have just a particle simulation with a single point, and here I have a volumetric setup where it's just a Pyro simulation to show you how to retime your volumes. Here I'm creating a point. I'm running it through a simulation where I have a large force multiplied by h, so it grows all the time, and then I have just a gravity, which is very high. So the resulting animation, we get this kind of slope shaped animation, if you can see, like so. Maybe I moved too far, like so. Maybe I can make the sphere a lot smaller, just like that. So what I'm doing here, I'm just shifting one frame backwards so we can actually visualize it, and I'll hop into the Retime node. Inside Retime node, we have different types of evaluation mode. We can take the frame, let's say multiply the frame, and now we're effectively making the new animation twice as fast, or we can move it 2 frames backwards, whatever you'd like. Then you can use the time. Time applies the same principle as by frame. The only difference, you're not accessing the frame, but the time. So you can also do the same stuff as with frames. Then you have speed. I think that's self-explanatory. You can adjust the speed, animate the speed, and it will change the speed of the new animation. Then you can also shift range. So you can, right now it's shifting. It's not shifting, but if I set this to 2, it's going to shift 1 frame backwards, if that makes sense. Like so. So this is just shifting the range. I don't think I should add anything there. And fit range. What fit range does, it takes a input frame range and crunches into a new frame range. So if I set this to 50, now what I've done, my new animation is 50 frames long, which means it's twice as fast as the original animation. So I'll set this back to 100, and we'll dive into the input frame range. I think it's self-explanatory. Also, these ones here are also self-explanatory. And the substeps. I would like to tackle these substeps. So by setting the substeps here, you're telling the Retime node where to search for the previous frame. So currently my pop network has 3 substeps, but if my simulation had only 1 substep, I would also keep the substep set to 1 here. If I have 2, I would also set this to 2, which means if I'm calculating, let's say, I'm calculating frame 75.68, and the Retime node has 2 substeps, it will search for frame 75.5 and 76.0 and interpolate between those 2 frames. If you increase the values, you have more and more substeps, which leads to a better result. Of course, it's also more expensive on computation, so keep that in mind. Also, most of the times you're saving to file cache your simulations. You also need to increase the substeps here, because if you file cache this simulation right now to your disk, it will only have a single substep. Also, keep in mind, if you increase the substeps, let's say from 1 to 2, you're effectively increasing the file cache size by 2. Essentially, this file cache size will be twice as large as if the substep was set to 1. Okay, so then how is it done? It's interpolating between those 2 frames. So it's essentially creating a new type of data based on interpolation between 2 values. It works the same way as a lerp function inside a wrangle. So lerp function is a function that linearly interpolates. Of course, we have different types of interpolations, which we have cubic and subdivision, but most of the time linear interpolation should be enough. If you're not doing some crazy retiming, linear should be enough. Input time step, you're just saying where to search for the previous frame data, or where the previous frame is in time. And then using velocities when interpolating is essentially you're saying that the retime can use velocities to interpolate the new position from a previous frame using the velocity. Because if you know how velocities work, you can also get the new position based on the velocity. Scale velocities will also adjust your velocities from your interpolation, so that's also good to enable. And interpolation, rotation, normals, quaternions, and transforms is useful if you're, for example, retiming RPDs. So the ID is good to set enabled. Most of the times you're going to be exporting your ID from particle simulation, and this is here for the retime node to be able to find the same point in the previous frame or in the frame or in the next frame, like you would do always in identification, or sorry, with ID attributes. Now I'd like to quickly move to retiming a smoke. So here I just have a quick simulation. Sorry, let me disable this. Here I have just a Pyro simulation, which I'm speeding by 4 times. Here I can also enable integer frames or disable integer frames and say, now we can see that the simulation, even though we sped up the simulation by 4 times, we lost the data in between frames, and now we have data every frame essentially, not every fourth frame, not every fourth frame, but every fourth other frame, but every frame. So I just made this to make the result more obvious. So I just sped up the simulation. Nothing special. Then what we can do is, let's say shift range would be the best one to see it on. And now if you look here, you want to always retime your volumes by using the advect, which will advect them essentially with the velocity. And now if I move it, let's say like 0.1 frame forward, we can see something is happening. Even though we didn't have the data, what happened is it took the velocity volume, which we have here, and it advected all the other volumes with that velocity. Similarly, how it would be done in the Pyro solver. So I hope you learned something new, and I'll see you again. Bye.